Hello, this is Knight Ministries. I am your host, Jeremy Knight. Don't forget to stick around to the end of the video for a code word you can put in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video and enjoy the show. Okay. Hello. Looks like I'm gonna have to change a few plans for this video. This is, episode 4 of Why I Left Young Earth Creationism. Initially, I had all the sources for this series as sources that were articles that I read while I was in college. Unfortunately, the article I was going to use for this video came from a website that is no longer running. I tried to retrieve the article earlier today, and the website came back unsupported. I don't think the website's going to come back up, so instead I'm going to use this book as my source. Navigating Genesis by Hugh Ross. So yeah, I'm going to use this book as my source. Even though I did not read this book when I was in college, and have only read it recently, it does talk about a failed Noah flood model that I did know about when I was in college, and was part of my reason for why I left Young Earth Creationism. So, yeah, we're going to use that book as our source. Okay? Sounds good. Hello. In this video, we are talking about failed Noah flood models. Failed Genesis flood models, failed global deluge models. Those are what we are talking about. Failed global flood models. The failed ones. That means the ones that were testable and failed the test. Not the ones that are unfalsifiable. Anyways, the two models that we are talking about in this video are models I heard about back when I was in college. I graduated college in 2012. So, we are talking about models that existed before 2012. And one of those models is the canopy idea. It's a failed global deluge model. And it came about in 1912, but I first heard about it from Kent Hovind in 2003. And we're using this book as a source because it talks about the canopy, the canopy model, and why it failed and how it doesn't match the evidence. It talks about that in this book. In this book here, it talks about the canopy model, and it talks about another model, the hydroplate model, and how that one failed. both of these models are models that I heard about back when I was in college. The canopy model and the hydroplate model. They're both models that I heard about back when I was in college. I read about how they failed and why they failed back when I was in college from a website that is suspended now. The website no longer exists, but the models, they're still around. They're still used. They're still talked about. They're still promoted by young Earth creationists. The canopy model, not so much. But the hydroplate model is very much still promoted by young Earth creationists. But anyways, those are the models that we're going to be talking about in this video. And we're going to be talking about why they failed and how they failed. We'll also talk about why the canopy model was mostly abandoned. Okay? Sounds good. Okay, from what I can tell, Answers in Genesis, AIG, they've abandoned the canopy model, but Kent Hovind still uses the canopy model. I'm not so sure if Ray Comfort still uses it, but Kent Hovind still uses it. AIG has abandoned it, and all three of them still use the hydroplate model. Matt Powell works with Kent Hovind, so of course he uses both the canopy model and hydroplate model. So Kent Hovind is the only one that I know of that still uses the canopy model. AIG has abandoned the canopy model. So yeah, we'll talk about why the canopy model was abandoned by AIG in a little bit, okay? First, I want to talk about why the canopy model failed. According to this book here, the reason the canopy model was proposed was to explain long lifespans and the extra water that the flood needed. That's the reason the canopy model was proposed. It was proposed to explain the long lifespans, the extra water, the fossils, the radioisotopes. It was proposed to explain a lot of stuff, but it failed on all accounts. And basically, from what I understand, the reason it failed was because gravity was going to pull it down eventually anyways. Gravity would have pulled it down almost immediately, and once the canopy was pulled down, it would have vaporized most of the life on Earth. It would have vaporized all the life on Earth. So yeah, the flood would have been unnecessary, because from what I can tell here, a canopy of that size would have just vaporized all life on Earth, whether it was water or ice. It would have just vaporized all life on Earth, from what I can tell in this book. And the other thing is the canopy would have also dissipated to space. Yeah. A canopy of that immense size would have just dissipated to space. Our planet would not have been able to hold a canopy of that immense size. Remember, we're talking about a vapor canopy, so even if you ignore that our planet would not have been able to hold such a vapor canopy, it would have immediately fell to the Earth due to gravity, and once it fell to the earth, it would have vaporized all life on Earth, making the flood unnecessary. So, yeah. Not only that, it would have boiled away all the water on Earth. It would have created a greenhouse effect that would have just boiled away all the water on Earth, and yeah, it just would not have been a good thing. Not in any sense of the word. It's also not enough to... The vapor canopy is not enough to explain the biodeposits on Earth. It's not enough to explain the... It just doesn't explain what they're trying to make it explain. It doesn't explain anything. It's just a guesswork and an ad hoc explanation, basically. So yeah, it doesn't work. That's why it failed. So there was another where does it talk about the hydroplate? Let me see here. I think it's on 159 is where it talks about the hydroplate. Page 159. Yeah, page 159 is where the hydroplate starts. As rapid plate tectonics is what it lists it as. But the collapse of the canopy was proposed for the extra flood waters, and the thickness of the canopy would have caused an uplift in the ocean basins, and that would have caused the tsunamis. But again, no evidence for a canopy means no tsunamis caused by a canopy. So yeah, basically this canopy, there's no evidence for it, okay? And there's basically no evidence for the hydroplates either. No evidence for the volcanism caused by the hydroplates. No evidence for the hydroplates themselves. No evidence for the radiometric decay that the hydroplates were supposed to cause too. No evidence for any of that stuff. I'm talking increased radiometric decay. There's no evidence for any of this stuff. It's just ad hoc explanations and basically guesswork and patchwork. So it fails because there's no evidence for it. It doesn't explain the biodeposits. It doesn't explain the radiometric decay. It doesn't explain any of the stuff that it tries to say that it explains. It's just ad hoc. It doesn't do what it says it does. Okay? Okay, let's talk about a few things that I already know in my head about the hydroplate model and the canopy model. From what I can tell, the canopy model and the hydroplate model, they both would have made the global deluge unnecessary by vaporizing all life on Earth through immense heating and immense boiling. Because both of them would have resulted in just everything being cooked trillions of times over. So all life on Earth would have been vaporized, making the Genesis flood or Noah flood or global flood or global deluge completely unnecessary. I like to call it the global deluge. But anyways, it would have made the global deluge completely unnecessary because it would have just vaporized all life on Earth. Both the hydroplate and the canopy model would have just vaporized all life on Earth. So And when I say all life on Earth, I'm including the life that would have been on Noah's Ark. Noah's little boat, yeah, all that life would have also been vaporized. So nothing would have been saved. It would have been impossible to save anything, because all the life, including the life on the Ark, would have been vaporized. So nothing would have survived. So it would have just been bad for everyone, okay? Including Noah and his captive animals. Everything would have been bad. Everything would have been bad. Everything would have been gone. Everything would have been dead. Everything would have been vaporized. Okay? Including Noah and his captive animals. Okay? Everything would have been vaporized. Nothing would have survived. That's my point. Okay? Okay, so yeah, once I figured out that both the canopy model and the hydroplate model are not supported by the evidence, they're not supported by the facts, they're not supported by the evidence, they're not supported by the science. Once I figured all that out, I had to abandon young Earth creationism. It was just another reason on top of other reasons that I've already talked about in my previous videos on why I left young Earth creationism. Once I figured out that these models are not supported by the science, they're not supported by the evidence, once I figured all that stuff out, I had to abandon young Earth creationism. I remained Christian. I'm still Christian to this day. Being Christian does not mean you believe in a young Earth. Being Christian just means you follow Christ. But I had to abandon things that just aren't of the gospel. Young Earth creationism isn't of the gospel, so I had to abandon just things that aren't of the gospel, things that are just tack-ons that are basically unnecessary. They're just molehills that are being turned into mountains. They're non-salvation issues. This whole age of the Earth debate and this whole global deluge debate is just non-salvation issues. You don't need to believe this stuff to be a Christian. So I abandoned young Earth creationism, but I stayed a Christian. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that makes sense. There's plenty of Christians out there that are not young Earth creationists, but they are Christians. That, in fact, they're the majority. They're the majority. The young Earth creationists are the minority. The majority of Christians accept mainstream science. They accept mainstream science. I accept mainstream science, and I'm a Christian. That's okay. That's how it works. I accept mainstream science, and I'm a Christian. There are plenty of other Christians out there that accept mainstream science and are Christians. So once I figured out that these flood models don't work, that they're not supported by the evidence, I abandoned young Earth creationism and started following Reasons to Believe, which is not young Earth creationism. It accepts mainstream science. Reasons to Believe accepts mainstream science, and it basically it combines mainstream science with Christian beliefs. So once I accepted RTB, that's Reasons to Believe, RTB, once I accepted them, I could combine mainstream science with my Christian beliefs. So accepting mainstream science allowed me to have sound Christian beliefs while also accepting mainstream science. That was my goal, to accept the mainstream science while also having sound Christian beliefs. And that's what RTB allowed me to do. That's what Hugh and his ministry allowed me to do. And for previous things that I've already talked about in my previous videos for why I left Young Earth Creationism, there's 3 of them, plus an introductory video. So this is video number 4, not including the introductory video, so it's all in the playlist that will be linked in the description. So this video will be part of the Why I Left Young Earth Creationism series, and once I figured out that these flood models don't work, along with all the other reasons discussed in my previous videos, I had to abandon Young Earth Creationism, but I remained Christian. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me. Okay? Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, now let's talk about why the canopy model was abandoned by AIG. So, AIG doesn't use the canopy model anymore. Answers in Genesis, they've abandoned the canopy model. That's AIG, Answers in Genesis. They've abandoned the canopy model. And they still use the hydroplate model, but they've abandoned the canopy model, which doesn't really improve anything because they replace one failing model with a different failing model, so it doesn't improve anything. Kent Hovind uses both the canopy model and hydroplate model, so, and I'm not sure what way Comfort uses. I think he uses the hydroplate model, but I'm not so sure about the canopy model. And Matt Powell works for Kent Hovind, so he uses both the canopy model and hydroplate model. But Answers in Genesis, they've abandoned the canopy model. They use the hydroplate model. Anyways, the reason AIG abandoned the canopy model is because it sounds way too much like Flat Earth. AIG does not want to sound like Flat Earth, and the canopy model sounds like the dome proposed by Flat Earth. So AIG abandoned the canopy model because it sounds like the dome proposed by Flat Earth. And AIG doesn't want to sound like Flat Earth, so they abandon it. They basically abandon it because they don't want to sound as stupid as Flat Earth. Doesn't really help when you're just replacing one type of stupid with a different type of stupid. You know what I mean? They still sound stupid. They're just replacing one type of stupid for a different type of stupid. You know what I mean? It doesn't help anything. But they think it does, so they do it. They think it helps something. They believe it helps something, so they do it. But it doesn't really help anything. You understand what I'm saying? So yeah, AIG abandoned it because it sounds way too much like Flat Earth. It had nothing to do with the fact that it fails the science, it fails the evidence, it fails all the tests that it would need to pass in order to actually be a good model. It fails all those tests, so it's just a bad model all around, but that's not the reason they abandoned it. They abandoned it because it sounds way too much like Flat Earth. It was a stupid reason to abandon it. It was a stupid model to have in the first place, but yeah, it was just dumb all around, okay? Okay, so that people are understanding what I am saying here, let me explain how thoroughly screwed we would be with the canopy and hydroplate models. When I say all life on Earth would be vaporized, I'm not speaking in hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating. I'm speaking literally here. All life on Earth would be vaporized. We're talking so thoroughly vaporized as there to be literally zero zero evidence that there was ever life on Earth in the first place. That's how thoroughly vaporized we would be. That's how thoroughly screwed we would be. We would be so screwed that hell would look like a tropical vacation. That's how screwed we would be here. Are you understanding what I'm saying here? That's how screwed we would be. Okay? Okay, so here's what I've decided for my next episode of Why I've Left Young Earth Creationism. I've already talked about dinosaurs a little bit, but I want to do an entire episode dedicated to dinosaurs alone, because dinosaurs by itself can be a reason for why I left Young Earth Creationism. And dinosaurs by itself is a reason for why I left Young Earth Creationism. So I want to do an entire episode dedicated to dinosaurs. I'm going to do an entire episode dedicated to dinosaurs. So in my next episode of Why I Left Young Earth Creationism, we're going to talk about dinosaurs. Okay? Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell. And follow me on Twitter and join my Discord. This is Jeremy Knight, and I just wanted to say, see you next time.